Many Christians are of the opinion that the United States is a Christian nation because the country was founded on Christian principles. Sadly, these individuals require a bit more education on the founding of our country, and worse yet, some of these people are college professors. Meet Professor Stephen Straley of Christopher Newport University, a public liberal arts college in Virginia. He is the author of the new Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom, which, if enacted, is described by Straley as allowing religious people an equal representation in what he calls the public forum. In reality, his goal is to have religion be the foundation of government, allowing legislation to be passed based solely on religious beliefs. This is Epidemic 2020. He has given me permission to use clips from his second interview with Professor Straley as a video response. So let's begin correcting Straley's misinformation and pointing out his bad arguments in a segment I'm going to call Get Your Church Out of Our State.
Where you think that God is irrelevant. We can lead our life as a nation without God. We don't need God in our lives. Legislation must have a secular purpose.
Straley does not even answer the question, which was why he conflates atheism and secularism. He instead explains what he doesn't like about a particular brand of atheism, which is that it promotes living without God. This is a straw man argument, one that you will hear a lot from Straley as well as from other anti-separationists. They will make church-state separation out to mean the government removing religion from people's lives, when it is in reality the doctrine of keeping the church and the state as two separate entities that cannot control each other. It is not something invented and solely endorsed by atheists. Much of it actually comes from John Locke, a Christian philosopher, who is partially responsible for many of the ideas in the Constitution, such as the First Amendment.
I think they can have values, but they don't find these values in the heaven of ideas, or there's no standard of perfection in life. But it's clear that theism is the best, and in my mind, the only real foundation for believing in what is moral.
The definition of value, according to dictionary.com, is relative worth, merit, or importance. Values do not require an objective standard. In fact, they don't even allow for it. This is by itself just making Straley wrong, but combined with his writings, it makes him a hypocrite. In his own statute, he says, "Today, people recognize that inclusion is the hallmark of a just society, and any policy that excludes and segregates a certain kind of people or ideas marginates them to the role of second-class citizenship." I cannot imagine what would make a group second-class more than arguing they cannot truly appreciate values, moral or otherwise.
Hitler used the ruse of the French Enlightenment, that is, the separation of church and state, to put the church in its place in order to re-educate people out of Christian beliefs.
Here Straley cites an example of the state directly involving itself in religion and labeling it as the practice of church-state separation. A college professor should know better than this. If what Hitler did is really the same thing we've been practicing for centuries, we'd expect to see a few more re-education camps telling people to stay away from religion.
Well, I think there's two Jeffersons. There's one I really like, and that's the one who wrote the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom. And then there's a Jefferson who spoke of a wall of separation between church and state. But Jefferson was not at the Constitutional Convention. He wants to perform a quiet euthanasia on the church. This is what he says in a letter to William Short.
The lesser offense here is his mentioning Jefferson not being present during the signing and debating of the Constitution. During his first interview, Straley was quick to argue that the Puritans served as an important part of the foundation for the country. That by itself was a dubious claim, but to then reject Jefferson's thoughts because he was only participating in the debate through mail is fairly hypocritical. The big issue is his quoting Jefferson as wanting to perform a quiet euthanasia on the church, especially given that the title of the entire interview is based on this quote. The quote comes from a letter Jefferson wrote in 1819 to William Short, Jefferson's private secretary. This is the worst example of quote mining I've ever seen, but don't take my word for it, read for yourself. The establishment of the innocent and genuine character of this benevolent moralist, and the rescuing it from the imputation of imposture, which has resulted from artificial systems, invented by ultra-Christian sects, unauthorized by a single word ever uttered by him, is a most desirable object, and one to which Priestley has successfully devoted his labors and learning. It would, in time, it is to be hoped, effect a quiet euthanasia of the heresies and of bigotry and fanaticism which have so long triumphed over human reason. Jefferson is referring to the work of Joseph Priestley, a Unitarian minister who devoted a lot of study to what could be considered debunking of popular church doctrine that was not in line with biblical scripture. It is these ideas, not religion and the church, that he hopes to euthanize using scholarly work. Straley knows this too, because it's expressed in the original Virginia statute that Straley so often compliments and supports, that religion should be protected from government intervention. What he is really saying when he talks about the two Jeffersons is that we should respect and listen to the Jefferson that protects religion from government, and ignore the Jefferson that tries to protect government from religion. He is actively endorsing cherry-picking.
But I actually think he does. He wrote the first draft of the Bill of Rights, including what we call the First Amendment. However, when you write the first draft, you don't necessarily get what you want.
The idea that the framers wanted religion in government is ridiculous. For one, there is no mention in the Constitution of even a creator, let alone God. If he is unwilling to listen to someone considered the father of the Constitution, how about actual legal documents like the Treaty of Tripoli, signed by the second U.S. President John Adams, which states, "As the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion." Or, as I pointed out, the beliefs of John Locke, who helped inspire the First Amendment. For all his assertions, the professor does not give a single line that would lead anyone to believe that the framers wanted legislation be based purely on religious ideas.
Although a recent poll, Gallup poll, says that 53% of professors at universities in America confess to hating evangelical Christians.
The study Straley cites isn't from Gallup, but by the Institute for Jewish and Community Research. It also does not say college professors hate evangelical Christians, but that they have unfavorable feelings towards them, which is nowhere close to hating. If this is Christians being repressed, then what do you call the University of Minnesota's poll that 47% of Americans would disapprove of their child marrying an atheist, and nearly 40% said atheists don't share their vision of American society? The lead researcher even calling it a glaring exception to the increasing rule of tolerance over the last 30 years.